So I think I'll shift the gear towards the another aspect, which is more towards ventilators, both the full ventilators and on-the-go ventilators. Two more. So if you remember, last time we covered two such ones. One was Koyo Lab and one was Aviantra. They both have the dialogues going. Koyo once is already in market. So these two are another ones which as per the timeline, both of them ability to come out rather within this month or early next month when we need a lot of ventilators on the ground. So we have Gautham here who represents the Biodesign innovations and a fantastic innovator based out of Bangalore and has been building. This is now not repurposing. He has been building a ventilator which can be on the go in between. And I think his innovation can be of significant impact as we go forward. So Gautham, over to you.
I represent the company Biodesign Innovation Labs. We've been working on this product called Respirate since the past 2017, where it is where we identified an unmet clinical need, shortage of ventilators leading to prolonged manual ventilation, where the prolonged manual ventilation of patients having morbidity because the patient caretakers are being asked to do the hand ventilation, which is otherwise has to be either used through a high-end mechanical ventilator. And due to the shortage of ventilators and the high cost involved in using the high-end ventilators and the unavailability of ventilators, so there is a lot of a burden of these respiratory illnesses creating mortality, especially in the low-income families. And this is the problem that we have identified way back in 2012, 2017, 16, and we found that there's a lot of need that is, there's a huge gaps and problems that we've identified. And we developed this product, Respirate. Mainly it is, meeting that kind of a unmet clinical need, where it is automating the process of manual ventilation, and it is delivering appropriate ventilation like breath rate, tidal volume, inspiratory expiratory ratio, which otherwise cannot be done through manual ventilation. And over the course of our R&D, we have done a lot of testing in terms of what is the tidal volume required for specific lung complaints, what is the specific components that has to go through, and we have done enormous amount of testing and R&D in figuring out the right ventilation parameters that is required, and the process of algorithms which is involved in creating, because lungs are very much sensitive. It has millions of alveoli, and giving over ventilation can cause lung injury like polytrauma, barotrauma. So we have developed this device with the clinicians' inputs, and they have been involved in the development process. And this can actually be used right now for the COVID-19 situation, where when there is a ventilators are not available, which is a high-end ventilator, this can be used as a stabilizing part. We are looking at emergencies and mass casualties, where patients who has respiratory arrest, patients who has other comorbidities can get immediate stabilization, where otherwise the patients usually usually have high mortality. If you look at this, where hospitals get overwhelming amount of patients to the ICUs and emergency wards, and there are very limited number of patients, and doctors has to choose between which patient has to get which ventilator, and there are a lot of ethical things which goes in place during these hospitals. And we need to make sure that we have this enough of the equipments which are aiding the patients during this crisis. And we also need to make sure that the supply chain gap and the demand is met, especially if you look at the hotspots in Maharashtra, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu. So there's a lot of coordination is required, and cooperation from both sides, from the government side and from the vendors or people, other stakeholders who are working. So we should work together in trying to meet that kind of a demand that is required to save the patient's lives. And we are talking about our devices directly saving the patient's lives, which is basically intubation and sedation, where the patient is being given invasive ventilation. And we need to make sure that the patient is stabilized, and once the patient is stabilized and there are enough ventilators are available, so they can slowly transition the patient to a high-end ventilator, which can be life-saving. So the doctors can work on the antivirals, and they can give the treatment over the course of period, but they also need to make sure that there is their oxygen saturation levels are getting improved, and because COVID-19 might have I mean, the virus could have a significant impact on getting recovered for the patient. So we need to make sure that the patient gets the enough ventilators in the hospitals, and there is no compromise in terms of. Right now, we have one manufacturing partner we have signed up with called Remedio. They have a FDA approved site, ISO 13485 facility, and they have assembly lines, and we are getting components from a lot of these places across India, and we're also trying to source other components through other vendors that we know, like DRDO and Honeywell sensors, pressure sensors, flow sensors. So right now there's a huge demand for these components. So these components are with very high pricing. The pricing is very high. So we're trying to see how we can optimize these things. What we are also trying to do is parallelly coordinate with other manufacturers, such as companies who are big organizations, industries who are working with directly with the Indian Railways, where they have a huge capacities to manufacture our devices at large scale. So there is a company called Patil Group we are in touch with, and there's a company called Kalyani Rafael Defense Systems we're in touch with. So we are looking at contract manufacturing. We're also looking at licensing, non-exclusive licensing. So both ways can go as we speak. And there is also operation costs involved in it to make sure some of the devices that we are manufacturing has to be either has to be given to the hospitals and or it has to be stored in the warehouse. So there's a lot of things which we are trying to figure out.
Their ability to scale up now and bring it to market with Remedio, I hope it actually gets there, and any help required, we are there, Gautham, to support you. As you mentioned, the connection between is also on settles to Indian Railways today for that. So that's there. But just coming back, we have another exciting work from what one would call it from the perspective of the ventilator, and who is building a full-blown ventilator in a very cost-effective manner. This is from Hyderabad. I don't know, we have a colleague from Aerobiosis here who can share their efforts.
So to tell about myself, I'm Rajesh Yadav. I've done my master's in bioscience and bioengineering from IIT Bombay. Right after that, we joined the Biodesign program of IIT Hyderabad, center called Center for Healthcare Entrepreneurship, where we have seen the problem related to shortage of ventilator back in 2018. So we visited hospitals. We have spent time in hospitals like 4 to 5 months, and we identified there is a lackage of a number of ventilators. We came to know the number of ventilators sort of estimate, which like the media is right now proposing 30,000 to 40,000 way back in 2018 itself. So, but we were working on a different line where we can reduce. We understood the lack of ventilator, and we also understood the number of hours or days a patient is on ventilator. With that need, started working on a product called DioVent. So that's what we were working till the COVID-19 issue rose to a height where we thought, okay, let's stop the idea of working on DioVent. Right now, there's a need for a low-cost ventilator, and which can be deployed as soon as possible, and scale up can be done because that's a need of the hour for the Indian government. So we started working on the G1 Lite low-cost portable emergency care ventilator in mid of March, and within like a very short time, like we were able to develop a full-blown ventilator, and the cost which we are estimating right now is 1 lakh. It's based on the BOM, but then once we are looking to go for a like mass manufacturing, the cost can go somewhere around 1 to 1.5. So that's a rough estimate which we have right now. So to develop our ventilator, we are in touch with a mass manufacturing partner called JCB, who has a very good manufacturing unit in Delhi. So they have shown interest to mass manufacture a device, and we are in touch with them. We have shared our letter of intent and MOU recently. So our timeline is to take this product to the market, at least have 20 to 30 units, at least by 1st of May. That's our timeline as of now. And to explain about our device has both invasive and non-invasive mode, can be connected to pediatric and adult patient, and it can be used for hospital, proper ICU based hospital, and it can be run on like a rechargeable lithium ion battery. So it does not require, if there is even a power cut, it can run on a battery, and it is easy to operate. The unique feature of our device, it can be operated to a smartphone. So one of the common problem which we have seen, like in Italy, 1,000 doctors got the device because they were interacting more with the patients. So keeping them as one of the key feature. So we have made this smart IoT enabled feature, which will allow to control the ventilator from a distance using a smartphone. So we have checked it. We are currently working on Bluetooth, but we got many feedbacks that Wi-Fi would be a better option, so that 10 to 20 or more than 20 to 30 devices can be connected to Wi-Fi module, and we can monitor the patient's condition. One single doctor can monitor the patient's condition at a distance. And to add on to it, the oxygen supply, it does not, it can provide from 21% atmospheric oxygen to 100% if we have oxygen cylinder, when that is possible. So these are some of the features which we have incorporated in our device. We are currently working, we are like a very small team. We are currently working from Pondicherry, and we are trying to identify a few manufacturers apart from JCB, so that the need is not just 10,000 units. The need for India is right now, it can go from anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 units. So we are identifying multiple manufacturers so that we can license the manufacturing rights to them, and we can have these manufacturing units near to the hotspot area, so that we will be able to give the government, whichever is the hospitals, whichever is looking for a ventilator, we can directly give it to them, which is very close to this hotspot area.
Thank you, Arvazes, and we hope that even with companies like JCB and others, your product gets to market soon and help all of us. We'll just move from the other nominations from today from SIDA. The next theme that we are looking at is now actually attempts to address, as we go forward, the testing will slowly go from the main towns and the major cities to a mass scale, which would be rural areas, suburban areas, and all that. Now, currently, as the testing sample, you take a swab, a kind of a nasal swab, which requires to be kept in a refrigerated conditions, that is around 2 to 8. We do not have very reliable capabilities to actually carry the samples long run, to take from a rural area to all the way to the main pathological centers which are approved by ICMR and so on. So there is a distance in terms of time which is requires a cold chain. And these two methodologies that we are bringing on town, again, this is the attempts to address there, where you can actually carry samples for testing. Of course, you can do many more things, but you can carry samples for testing to main path labs in the main district hospitals or others without any, as one said, degradation of the sample. So the two startups that we have actually identified and being nominated are, the first one is Blackfrog, the startup out of Manipal in Karnataka, doing fantastic work, which have now a kind of a carry-on, solid state physics based carry-on, for refrigerated bag, which actually allows you to do a very fine-tuning temperature balance in that. So I'll invite Mayur to actually tell us a little bit more about that. Mayur?
Hi, Dr. Taslim. I'm Mayur. I'm CEO of Blackfrog Technologies. We've developed a product called Embolio, which is a portable battery-operated system for last-mile transport of temperature-sensitive biologicals. And like Dr. Taslim explained, a critical aspect for COVID-19 detection is collection and transport of viral specimens. So you have to pick up the nasal or throat swabs and transport it back to a central facility. And this requires a very strict cold chain management, a temperature of 4 degrees Celsius. And so we're trying to scale up our manufacturing so that we can provide a few units to the local hospitals who are in need for transport right now. But our end goal is that we want to encourage home-based sample collection, which is priority right now, as well as once the lockdown is lifted and we go back to our routine and there are still going to be positives here and there, right? So if you have a non-life-threatening or a non-severe symptom, you ideally don't want to rush to a primary health facility or a peripheral facility. You want to get on a telemedicine service and figure out what the situation is. And after that, we want to provide a solution where we can collect the samples from your doorstep and it's taken back to a laboratory so that you don't break your quarantine while the test process is happening. There's no risk of you contracting it to others. There's no, and there's a very, so for example, my dad has a severe spine problem and we were supposed to take him to the hospital 3 days ago. The biggest issue right now is that nobody wants to go to a hospital because you might possibly pick up COVID-19 while you go to the hospital. A hospital is a seriously dangerous place right now. So we want to separate the suspected cases in a way that up until their test results come out positive, you stay in quarantine. And this, in a way, helps with the easing the burden of healthcare workers as well, so that they don't have to focus on testing as much as they can focus on treating the confirmed cases. So this is our vision with our product. But apart from this, I mean, we actually developed the product specifically for transport of vaccines. So we're hoping the vaccines come out soon so that we can implement our other system of geotagging and a few of the newer technologies that we're incorporating so that we can effectively cover immunization programs. So, and yeah, this applies to serological testing as well. That's what we're doing.
How did you name your company Blackfrog?
Blackfrog is actually a common name for a microhalid frog called Melanobatrachus indicus. That's endemic to the Western Ghats, the place that we come from, and it's kind of on the verge of extinction. So as a tribute to the frog, we named it Blackfrog.
Very thoughtful. I think Mayur doing fantastic work. His original technology, again, this is shifting, but his original technology, which is one of the most important in terms of vaccination program. Right now, Gates Foundation is possibly less worried about general vaccines, but more worried about delivery of vaccines in a proper form, right? Not detachment. And this happens because of last mile cold chain issues, which is not. So actually, this technology allows that to address that gap. Going forward, the another company which actually is doing very good in the same thematic fashion is Tesol. And I hope Mr. Rajat Gupta is there to actually address that, because again, last mile cold chain issue. If Rajat can please tell us a little bit.
Great. So just a little bit about us. We are almost about 7 years old as a company, and most of the work that we have done till now has been in the food space and food security space, which is where we've deployed cold chains. A lot of work has been done on delivery of food. We work with all the large chains like Amazon, Reliance, Grofers for delivery of food from their warehouses till home. And our primary focus has been to sort of work on distribution of perishable commodities in the across right till the customer, because that's a space where we see a challenge both technically as well as commercially. Now, incidentally, just 6 months back, we got approached by a couple of labs, and they asked us to work on ways in which we could transport samples of blood and urine from different collection centers to the labs in a temperature controlled environment. And the first thing that we developed that product, we tested the product. It's with a couple of labs. The second thing that we started working on was pharmaceutical distribution, again in the cold chain. And the difference between what they do now and what we enable is that the overall duration of cold chain maintenance is much longer, because we use proprietary chemicals which are able to maintain temperatures for a much longer period of time. So our solutions are able to carry anywhere from 200 to 400 odd samples. So I was just thinking about about 200 odd bags in the field could carry around 80,000 samples. And given that we don't, unlike many of the other wonderful innovators that I've heard, we don't have so much of a background in sort of the diagnostic space. So we've been very actively trying to engage with all possible labs and institutes to help us understand how this solution can actually be used for diagnostic collection. So I've gone through the complete process of how the swabs need to be collected, how they need to be transported, and temperature maintenance of these samples is also a critical aspect, as I understand, to have a higher efficacy, of the result. And therefore, we would really like to use this opportunity to connect with the right set of stakeholders, which is what I requested CCAM, to see how we can use all our knowledge, all our experience with the food into this segment, and see what best we can do. That's where we come from. We already have good sort of quantities of materials with us because we work in this segment, so we already have some stocks with us to see how quickly we can understand and do some pilots and trials with the relevant authorities. I've written to ICMR, I've written to a few other stakeholders as well. But I can imagine what they're going through right now. So I'm not really expecting too many answers to come. But, out of the 15, 20 places I approached, CCAM did revert.
I think, just to indicate to Rajat, I think the attempt is in these times to actually identify and see the need and put you on the platform. And your story and Shraddha have been phenomenally helpful. So this is all collective effort. So we are all there.